My story begins a few years ago. I decided to use my computer skills to run a small darknet forum, mainly just to share information without censorship. At first I was extremely paranoid about my site getting hacked and having my anonymity being compromised, so I went online and began to research everything. After countless days of scouring blogs, forums, and other material, I decided I was ready. Now I didn't have any money, so I couldn't buy a VPS and host the site offshore or whatever, so I decided to use my old laptop. After all, I wasn't planning on running a major website. So after setting the server up and what I thought was literally every single thing I could do to harden it against attack, I put the site online. Everything went great for a couple of months. Donations rolled in as the user base grew larger and larger. After around 5 months, the user base had gotten so big I had to upgrade and migrate everything to a new PC, which I built just to host the forum, and from there everything seemed perfect. The site was running smoothly and there were no issues with the migration. Until one day, when I came home and noticed the PC had frozen. I didn't think much to it, maybe just a software bug, cause I had rebooted and it was clear something was wrong with the PC when it began to light up, beeped a few times, then shut off. So I thought to myself, okay, it's a hardware issue. After a few hours trying to diagnose the issue, I figured it out and turned out the RAM had been corrupted. I took it back to the store since it was still under warranty. The customer rep told me it might have just been a faulty stick. When I got home, I replaced the stick of RAM and had the site backed up and running within a few hours. Everything seemed to be perfect again. I apologized to the users for the downtime and everyone seemed to be happy enough. Fast forward a few months, the forums have been up and running for around a year. For about a year and a half now. This is when things started to get really weird. I finished work on a Friday. It was a gorgeous day. In the middle of summer, I came home, had something to eat, and sat down in front of my PC and noticed I had a message. I realized that somewhere I'd messed up. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not like in a saint or anything. I don't really know why anybody would actually target me, but the world is a crazy place, so whatever. The message had my details from my name, address, bank details, passwords, private emails, private messages, everything from nearly every single device I freaked out, and I immediately took the PC offline. Turned my internet off, but little did I know that this guy had done his research. After a couple of hours pacing my room, I received another text message.
I know everything about you.
The message was sent via some type of SMS service, so there was no way to trace it. And then my phone rang.
Don't talk, just listen. I know everything there is to know about you. All I want is 2 Bitcoin or things will get worse. I'll send you a text with the wallet details.
The phone call ended just as quickly as it started. I opened my laptop and checked my Bitcoin wallet. There was enough left over from the donations to pay off the guy, and I hoped it would be the end of it. So I entered the guy's details and sent a payment. And then my phone rang again.
Thank you for complying. Unfortunately, someone I know really likes you.
He hung up. Panicking, I called the number back. An automated message began to play. The number you have dialed has not been recognized. A few hours passed and I began to think to myself, maybe the last call was just him having fun. And after a long day, I decided to just go to bed. Sometime around 2 a.m., I was woken up by the sound of banging at my front door. I jumped out of bed and turned on all the lights. Grabbing a knife from the kitchen, I walked slowly towards the window, and I looked out. I could see someone standing by my car. When they spotted me, They got in and drove off. I rushed to the door in hopes I might be able to get a license plate, but by the time I opened it, they'd already turned the corner. As I turned, I noticed an envelope on the floor. I picked it up, went back inside, and locked the door. Closed the curtains and sat in the kitchen. I placed the envelope on the counter and stared at it for around half an hour, trying to muster up the courage to open it. Did these guys really come to my house? I thought to myself. After the half hour was up, I decided enough was enough. I opened the envelope and pictures fell out onto the counter where they were, of me sleeping. These guys had not only been outside my house, they'd been inside whilst I was sleeping. The images had been edited and strange love hearts had been added next to me, so now I was sufficiently freaked out. I didn't go back to sleep, and when the sun broke the darkness, I decided to head to the police station and tell them everything. I hadn't broken any laws, so I hoped they would just help me at least. After hours of explaining everything, they told me there was nothing they could do. At this point, I had never felt so alone in the world. I was scared of what this guy was planning for me. I didn't have any idea of what I was supposed to do or expect, so I decided to wipe everything on my laptop, PC, and phone. I picked up everything I needed, stuffed it into a bag, and decided to leave. I had a couple of friends that I knew that I could rely, so I called up an old buddy named Marcus, and we met, had a few beers, and I explained everything to him. He offered me a place to stay, and I hoped it would be the end of everything. A few days later, it happened again. There was a knock at the door, first thing in the morning. Me and Marcus both went out to find another envelope. Same thing, pictures of me sleeping, but these were in Marcus's house. I started freaking out again, and Marcus just said, "Okay, well, we need to do something. Maybe set a trap or something." So we went over numerous ideas, everything you could think of, from cameras to baiting him. We even settled on the idea of staying up during the night and locking him in the room. We filled the bed up with pillows, set up cameras, and even barred the windows in the room. We hid in the room next door. After a few hours had passed, we heard the lock rattling on the front door, and we knew it was game time. We'd left the door just slightly ajar so we could see outside, and he went past, and the moment he went into the room, we both sprung into action. Quickly as we could, we closed the door and locked it from outside using a chair and a metal bar. There was only one way he was getting out, and he'd have to destroy the door. We could see the silhouette of him as he paced the room quietly. It was creepy. We called the police as we kept an eye on him. At last, I thought, I can finish this and move on with my life. Just as the police arrived, we noticed the guy take out a gun and place it onto his head, which he held up a sign that read, "I love you." And then he pulled the trigger. The police barged in, guns drawn, told us to both get on the floor. We complied and shouted, "He's in there!" pointing at the door. The police removed the makeshift lock and entered the room, called for an ambulance, and put me and Marcus in the back of a police car. I'd been sat in the interview room for a good couple of hours, I guess whilst they carried out the investigation, when a detective came in and sat down in front of me, opening a folder and placing pictures on the table. "Do you know her?" "Her?" I said, looking at the pictures. "No," I replied, confused. He looked at me and said, "This is the person who's been stalking you." And then he began to tell me they had visited her home and found a shrine with photos of me all over the place, from restaurants to the gym, even shopping. He went on to tell me that she'd been the one that sent the messages, made the phone calls, etc. And they'd also found a diary which had some kind of future plans of me and her. She wanted to be my wife, and we'd been chatting for around a year and a half at the moment I started the forum. After I explained everything, the detective said I was lucky to be alive. She had been planning to drug and kidnap me. She'd even made some makeshift lock bed so I wouldn't be able to escape. To this day, I feel very lucky, and I haven't been on the dark web since. Let me start this off by saying that it is imperative that you stay off the dark/deep web, no matter what anyone tells you. No good can come from using it, and I'm about to tell you why. I was 15 at the time. I had come home from school on a Friday afternoon ready to relax, kick back, and enjoy the short break. I had started using code about a year prior. Nothing too fancy, just basic Python, Java, HTTPS, etc. And I was practicing it daily. Now, I had known about the dark web before this took place. I would sometimes buy weed off of it, but that was the extent of it. This particular day, however, I decided to venture further and really take a look at the dark web. I'm pretty sure a lot of people are familiar with the iceberg diagram representing the internet's content. For those who don't know, the surface web contains about 10% of the internet's content, while the deep and dark web take up the other 90%. I was ready to see what it really held. I heard stories about what goes down on the deep web: murder, inhumane torture, CP, etc. But I didn't really believe that they were all legit, so I hopped on Tor and began to see what I could dig up. I started off by going on the hidden wiki and browsing through various websites, most of which contained illegal things such as drugs, hackers and hitmen for hire, and lots of CP. I clicked on a random forum link, which took about a minute to load. I wish I could remember the name of it. It was a forum where people could pick a topic. Like, let's say they wanted to talk about politics, dealing with mental health, stuff like that. I noticed one of the topics was a pedophile forum, and I don't even want to go into detail on what I saw in there. There was no particular one that caught my eye. The link was in all red while the rest were all black. It said, "Not for the weak. Enter at your own risk." Curious as to what it was, I clicked on the link and it brought me to a forum that had only one link on the whole page. I clicked on the link and it brought me to a chat room. I realized that nobody was saying anything on it, only sending links, because I had an idea of what was on these links. I wish I had listened to my gut feeling, which was telling me to close out while you still can. However, the ignorant, curious teen took over me, and I started setting up some protection for myself using the code I had learned. I later realized this amateur coding I did would not protect me from these advanced people with malicious intent. I clicked on a random link and a page loaded surprisingly fast. It looked to be another chat room. I went to type hello or something, but it would not let me. I sighed and began moving my mouse to go to the previous page when a noise went off. I had received a chat. The message said, "Hello, new user. I see you have found my site. Would you like to continue?" I had tried typing again, but I still couldn't. The next message sent chills down my back, and my hands are shaking just recalling it. It read, "No son, not the keyboard. I tried turning off my computer, but of course nothing worked. Another message popped up saying, I guess I'll take that as a no. The screen suddenly changed and a video began playing. It was a black screen, but I could hear a deep male voice say,
Unfortunately for you, you do not have a choice.
I grabbed a sticky note and I put it over my webcam, and the voice on the screen said,
Ah, so we're playing games now, huh? Well, I can play.
The video then began to change, and I realized the man was taking his hand off the camera. He was a short man, maybe 5'11", but that brought me no comfort. He held up a knife and said,
Name any body part.
I then, for the first time, noticed a cloth in the corner of the room, covering up something which I could only assume to be a body. I had had enough. I unplugged my computer and I laid on the floor, panting for hours until I could finally get up. I now suffer from anxiety, and I will not touch a computer unless I have to. Just be safe out there, you guys. I had just started in a summer job where I was basically a custodian, cleaning classrooms in preparation for the upcoming school year. My dad worked for the town's district, so he was able to get me this job. I was the youngest one there, as I'm only 20, and there are a handful of people that worked with me. They were usually off doing some other tasks like waxing the floor or covering up foul writing on the walls with paint. The schools were completely empty, besides the staff who was cleaning. Things were going fine my first couple of weeks. For the most part, I was on my own, wiping down desks and dusting while listening to music. It was nice, and I enjoyed not having someone on my butt telling me every day what to do. After I had finished cleaning the middle school, the head custodian had sent me and another woman, we'll call her Karen, who was my coworker, to go start cleaning the high school. She was a slacker who'd often go out to smoke cigarettes, but she was really nice. She didn't really care what I did, and I was always off doing whatever she wanted. So yeah, basically, I was alone. Again, I didn't mind because I liked the freedom, but I was taking a bulk of the work. A few days had gone by and I finished cleaning a couple hallways. It was time to move to the basement where the robotics and woodworking classes were. I didn't think anything of it as I got down there. I noticed light was peeking through under the doorway of the classroom. The windows of the class were covered with shades. I found this really odd since it was summer and no one was in the building besides Karen and I. I walked over and peeked in the door window. The lamp was on at the desk, but no one was inside. I proceeded to knock. No answer. After turning the knob, I realized this door was locked, so I used my key to open the door. A musty smell flooded my nose. I decided to scope out the room. Maybe someone had forgotten to turn the lamp off. I disregarded the idea when I noticed the computer at the teacher's desk was on. The screen looked weird. I'd never seen this layout before. The website was all black with red writing on it. It also had a chat box. I didn't have time to read the chat because a sudden voice from the door came behind me.
Sir, can I help you?
Sorry, I'm just cleaning the classrooms and I didn't know if anyone was in here. Sorry.
So I see. Well, I appreciate that, but don't worry about it in here.
I'm, I, I'm, I'm working on a few things, so sawdust is gonna get everywhere again, and you can just clean it after I'm done.
No problem.
Wait, could I ask you a favor? I have this, petition. It's to get more funding for the extracurricular classes, like art and woodworking.
He sounded so uncertain, as if he made it up out of thin air. Sure, I said. I paused for a moment when he handed me the paper. It only had two of the names on it. The petition required a full name, phone number, email, and address. I immediately felt uncomfortable, but I didn't know how to decline, so I just added my information.
Thank you so much, dear. You have a beautiful bone structure, by the way.
Thanks. I grabbed my cleaning supplies and I sped out of there. After that experience, I didn't really put much thought into it. Yeah, he was creepy, but I didn't really have much evidence to persuade myself that he was out to get me or something, until I started running into him throughout the school. It became pretty frequent. It's as though he was watching me. Now I was concerned. I dismissed it because he just smiled and waved after I saw him. Maybe I was overreacting. I mean, he was a teacher there after all. Still, my gut feeling was telling me something wasn't right. Weeks went on and I started to notice him less and less. I only had a few more weeks at this job and then I'm back off to college. One day, the boss let everyone out early since it was almost 100 degrees. I got home and decided to hang out with some friends. It was a group of us, about 5 or 6. My boyfriend's brother joined us this time, which was unusual since he's usually not a social person. He is really into technology, so he's always on his computer, which he built himself. He's also good at hacking and stuff like that. Anyway, that day he told me he needed to talk to me, and it was serious. I was conceited, but we weren't close, so it must have been legit. He brought me into my friend's living room and pulled out his laptop. To my surprise, he was on the deep web. So, you are up for bid on the deep web. He hesitated as he said this. Wait, what? I knew how the deep web worked. I would often listen to horror stories, but I'd never been on it, so how would my info even get on there? It suddenly clicked. The web page matched the one I saw in the classroom a month back. I had also given my info to that guy. My heart felt like it dropped to my stomach. I explained this to my boyfriend's brother. He advised me to call the police immediately, which is what we did. They did an investigation on the teacher and found the activity on his computer. Not only that, but he had several girls' information, along with pictures. Some of the girls were minors too. There were also wooden contraptions they found in his home, which he probably made in the shop. He probably planned to use them on these girls. Or me. I was disgusted, but relieved that he was caught. I often wonder what would have happened if the page was never discovered. Would he have kidnapped me and killed me online for these sick people? I don't know, and I don't want to know. I changed my number and I've since moved on from the incident. This just goes to show you, you can never give out your personal information. Please stay safe on the internet. Thank you for listening.